Welcome to a show about learning technologies so powerful they transcend the boundaries of reality itself. I'm your host, Pinky Gonzalez, and this is New School VR.
Hey everybody, Pinky Gonzalez here. Welcome back to New School VR. Today we're with Matt Witkamp. He is the Associate Partner and Director of Design Strategy at Citizen Inc. here in beautiful Portland, Oregon. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And in addition to being from Citizen today, thanks to the snowpocalypse of 2016 round 2, we're actually recording at Citizen.
Yes, we are.
And it's a beautiful place you have here.
Well, thank you. Down a little bit outside of the Pearl, but yeah, out in the industrial section. This building used to be a glass manufacturing building.
No kidding. And now you do AR, so that's kind of appropriate somehow.
So we went from real glass to Hololens and Google Glass and all those other glasses.
Very nice. All right, so one of the things I like to do with any guest is to go all the way back to the source and hear about your history, some of which I've done some spying and know something about. But before we do that, let's talk about Citizen. So obviously you guys are involved with AR, or this show may not be quite so relevant, but you guys do a lot of things well beyond AR. What all does Citizen get itself into?
That's a really good question and can take a long time, but I'll try to keep it succinct. So Citizen, we've been around since 2005. We've been around for a while. Our roots are deepest in mobile. So that's kind of how we got started as a firm. And we've done hundreds of engagements with mobile carriers such as AT&T, but we're not limited to mobile. We also work with a wide variety of clients in healthcare and finance and connected transportation. We have an IoT company that we've started, and so yeah, quite a few different areas. But the great thing is that gives us a broad perspective of what's going on in the different areas, and we have shared learnings that we can apply to any engagement that we participate in.
Outstanding. So you guys really do have your hands in a lot of pockets, different pies.
You could say that, yeah.
I love it. So you are one of the very few, and especially this time last year, there are very, very few companies, individuals or otherwise, that had actually had a chance to develop on the Microsoft HoloLens platform. That's what we're going to talk about today, AR specific stuff.
Correct.
So let's start from scratch on that specific thing. What is it that you guys made there, and why were you the most qualified to do that?
All right. So we went through the agency partnership program with Microsoft. If you do a little Google digging, you can find some details around that. But yeah, we partnered with Microsoft and ended up partnering with Stanford Medical. And the question was, could the mixed reality and the augmented reality capabilities of the HoloLens be used to help surgeons in preparation for surgery? In particular, breast cancer surgery. So what we ended up doing is we worked with two of the leading radiologists at Stanford, as well as one of their leading breast cancer surgeons, quite closely to find out what is it that they need, how would they most likely want to use this, find out, because the needs of a surgeon are very specific, right? And so we found that Dr. Amanda Wheeler's input on that project was invaluable, as well as Dr. Bruce Daniel and Dr. Hargraves. Just understanding the process of what they go through in their day-to-day lives when treating these patients, and understanding what is the best opportunity to leverage this technology to help improve outcomes. Just not only potentially reduce the return rates for repeat when they don't get all the cancer, the patient has to come back, but also to improve cosmetic outcomes. And so there's a lot of benefits that we're looking to achieve with what we did with there. And so we ended up creating a proof of concept that allows us to map MRI data directly onto the body of a patient. And of course, because the experience of the HoloLens is a 3D experience, you can see this data, the MRI data, in 3D. But not only that, but we're also showing the size and location of a tumor on the body, again, in 3D. So if you really think about the currently accepted and commonly accepted procedures for treating breast cancer, an MRI is taken. MRI is a 3D data set. The radiologist takes that data set, identifies the location of the tumor, then ends up passing along significant images to the surgeon. Of course, the surgeon could look on a screen at a 3D representation of that data, but when it comes to being in the surgery room, we're planning on how we're going to do the cuts on the patient to get this tumor out. The surgeon's looking at two-dimensional images, usually on a screen. And so rather than having this, having the surgeon having to translate what he or she is seeing in 2 dimensions back into 3D in their head to figure out where I believe this tumor is in this patient, instead we're representing that via holograms through the Hololens directly onto the body of the patient, so you can actually see where it is.
So, stupid, uninformed question, but when you have a patient in surgery, you've got them opened up. There's a tumor there.
Right.
Is it not obvious where there are cancer cells and where there are?
Not always. Even with the MRI, when you do an MRI scan, a radiologist, you still need to have that human element of the understanding of how to read that data to even identify where in all these different shades of gray, where is that tumor?
Got it.
And what we're looking at on how using this proof of concept is in preparation for surgery. So one of the things that every doctor will know is that as soon as you cut into the body, the flesh deforms. Things move around. But really the opportunity that we see with this proof of concept is getting that mental model, that 3D model, into understanding where that position and size is into the head of the surgeon is really, really where we see the opportunity. And of course, we're talking about how this might also be used during surgery, but in just this initial use case, proving out the technology and the concept, we're looking at as a preparation tool.
Am I correct in assuming that you, Matt, are not a surgeon yourself?
Correct. I am not. My background is user experience design, so it's my job to get into people's heads, which is why I was always asking Amanda lots of questions.
Wow. So how are you chosen for that?
Just through our past experience with working with Microsoft. There was a call out for different ideas on how HoloLens might be used, but when we came to the table, they said, we're putting you with Stanford. So that's kind of how that came to be.
Very nice. Tell us a little bit about what that call was, who else was applying, what other projects were approved or proposed.
So some of the other projects I'll talk about some of my experience as well. I also have quite a bit of experience in the healthcare space. I used to work for Siemens Medical on the the healthcare management side. I was part of a startup. We have had a bunch of healthcare focused applications for feature phones before the iPhone came out, and that's when I later transitioned over to Citizen. But
feature phones.
Feature phones.
That's how you know Matt's legit.
Also known as flip phones or the Razor or
things that live on today because they cannot be destroyed because they were just made that well.
They were made to last. Yes. Yeah. So we've had quite a bit of experience in the space, and so I mean, honestly, out of my entire career, this Project Serra with Stanford has been by far my favorite project ever. It's been a passion project for me.
All right, so now I'm branching on a couple of different question paths that we're going to make sure to cover all of. But Serra, Project Serra, I think I failed to mention that was the name, Serra.
Correct.
Does that stand for something or just a super nice name?
It's one of the streets by Stanford. So
one of the streets.
Yes. So it was the project code name that we used, and it just kind of stuck. It has a nice ring to it. And if you ever meet up with me, and I'll show you the experience, a lot of the voice commands are prefaced with Serra, because we don't want to have confusion in the operating room. But that's how that can be.
That's nice. Okay, so then back to the question. So you guys were chosen because you had an existing relationship with Microsoft. You personally had a background in some of these feature phone and other technological developments over time. Was it a highly competitive review process? What did you literally have to do in order to get involved with this, and who else was taking a swing at it?
Honestly, I wasn't a part of those conversations, so I can't answer that question.
Fair enough. Okay, so you guys get involved. Did the doctors have the idea in the first place? Here's what we need, or how much collaboration was involved in the creation of the experience itself?
So there's quite a bit of collaboration up front. For anyone who's used a HoloLens, there's a holoanatomy demo, which shows the anatomy of a person life size in 3D. You can place it in a room and walk around it and do some interaction with it. So they saw some of those early concepts from the HoloLens. And there was one quote from Dr. Daniel. He said that when we first saw this technology, we thought it was made for us.
Wow.
So they saw from the very beginning some potential there. And so, with the early conversations between Stanford and Microsoft exploring, what's been done so far, what is it capable of? There's some technical challenges that we ran into that we had to do a lot of discussion around and exploring on how to solve for. For example, the HoloLens, it's designed to be a room-sized experience. But if you look at, the use case of a surgery, you're up close and personal. The device wasn't really designed to be used that close. And so we actually had to...
That is interesting.
We were pushing, with Microsoft, we were really pushing the capabilities of the device in order for it to, work for this particular use case. And one of the requirements for the project was a certain degree of accuracy, which we were able to exceed, which is also exciting.
Very nice. This is the exact opposite of where you hear so much of this conversation, at least in the VR world right now. Room scale is where it's at. And thankfully, as of the recording of this show anyway, Oculus has finally come out with the touch controllers.
Yep.
Now they have a 2 or 3 camera array or more, and they're finally getting to where Vive started. And everybody in that top tier technological class is really making a big deal out of room scale, which is wonderful, meaning you can walk around and physically be in an environment. This is the first I've heard of the opposite challenge, being in close quarters and this technology being really critical for a close-up scenario.
Yeah, and just to give the listeners a sense of how close we're talking here, when a surgeon goes in to do a surgery, they do what's called a plant, where they go in and they plant their feet, and they normally do not move from that spot. And usually the elbows are tucked in at their sides, and then that they're working there because oftentimes surgeries are hours at a time, in order to reduce the level of fatigue and whatnot. There's a plant, the elbows are usually kind of tucked in. And so as far as how far they're reaching, the listeners can reach their arms out and get a sense for how close those interactions would be with the HoloLens.
Wow. That's pretty extraordinary stuff. How much of the HoloLens experience is important before surgery versus during it? Is there a point where it makes sense for the surgeon to take it off? Is it a planning thing? Is it a first cut thing? Is it a whole duration of the process thing?
Right. So a good way to describe it is the key moment that the HoloLens is driving the surgeon towards. Of course, there's the understanding the size and the position and the shape and in relation to the other masses in the body there. But also the key moment is when the surgeon places their marks for surgery, for the cuts. So it's to drive to that moment of placing the mark. If we compare it to the currently commonly accepted procedure, as I started before, there's the MRI, the surgeon gets the images, and then they figure out where the next part is they make some marks, and they actually insert wires into the breast to where they believe that it is. Then they go do an x-ray and they say, okay, are we close? To how much do we need to deviate? And then they use those wires as a guidepost to get to where the tumor is. So again, just to really improve the understanding in the mind of the surgeon where it is in relation to the rest of the mass. And then of course they can plan accordingly. And, Amanda described it as, as soon as she sees it and sees where it is in relation to the body, she has it in her head and she's good. And she can then take it off and proceed with the surgery as normal.
Got it. Wow. So you described this as a prototype or proof of concept. Is it actually in use now? Where's it at?
So Stanford has recently gotten funding for human testing. So anything healthcare related, it's a long process. It takes a lot of time, a lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of testing to make sure that it's not going to do any harm. And so it's moving forward. It's progressing. So wow. They've started, I believe they've already started the human testing.
So this is probably the most critical layer of learning technology. I mean, unquestionably, this show has yet encountered. We're 5 shows in, man. I don't want to brag or anything, but we've spent a couple hours with some people that know some stuff. But no, that to learn about a life critical situation in order to make the best decisions possible. That is a heavyweight application for something that in many ways is kind of still just a novelty. It's fun, it's interesting.
Yeah, fun and interesting, but I mean, it's as the more and more I work with HoloLens and just VR in general. I have a Vive set now, but
well done.
I've been having a lot of fun with that. But anyway, so the more that I use the mixed reality and augmented reality and the virtual reality, all these different realities, we could just call it immersive experiences. The more I use it, the more it was interesting when I was working on site at Microsoft, working alongside the Microsoft teams and talking a lot with Stanford. After about a month of really actively using it and thinking about it and how it applies, just like my third eye opened up when I first put on a HoloLens, but then it really opened up and I really started to grasp the potential of the technology moving forward. And so even just from an education perspective, if we take a look at what we're doing with Project Serra, there's been a lot of discussion around what does this mean for education and training surgeons? Because even with Amanda and the training that she's doing, if she's training another surgeon that's going through the medical school, the spaces and the views when they're operating are very small. It's very tight and cramped. They try to keep the cuts as small as possible. So if she needs to see what her student is doing, she has to have them, basically extract out, move away from the patient, and then she can go in and see what's going on. But with the, mixed reality and the video capture and the first person perspective that you can tap into with the HoloLens, what kind of opportunities does that have for, side-by-side training where one person can actually see exactly what the other person is doing?
So you were hinting about this earlier, I think sometimes we're so close to something we don't even realize. We know what we know, so we forget that some people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Just the concept of the smaller the incision, the less impact on the patient.
Right.
So literally, the more specific, the more accurate the first cut, the better the end result. So of course, a training environment to be able to, whether it's literally use this piece of equipment, or to be thinking this way, or otherwise, like these are really consequential developments.
Yeah, and that's one of the main, one of the many values we see with what we did is just not only the chance to have a better understanding for doctors to understand what they need to do. Our goal is to give them a tool that allows them to be more accurate. So therefore, if they're able to be more accurate, then they can be more precise on what they're taking out and not have to take out so much. Because normally they call it they have to reach a certain margin. And they'll just take out extra to make sure that they got it. Because I forget the exact number. It's like 20 or 30% of all breast cancer surgeries end up having the patient has to go back because they didn't get it all.
Wow.
And it's just a traumatic experience for the patients because they've already gone through so much just to get to the first one. And what happens a lot of the time is those patients just say, "I'm done. Just take it all." So they end up having this very disfiguring and painful procedure because they're just done. They can't go through it again. And so our goal is to reduce the number of return surgeries as well as improve cosmetic outcome because we're giving them something that hopefully allows them to be more precise and they can make sure that they not only get it all but also get the right part.
That's really incredible. All of this has been done with essentially a beta release of this hardware from Microsoft. The HoloLens is not currently commercially available. It's a little pricey at $3,000 a pop, right? Do you have to be approved as of this recording to buy one, or is it kind of as long as you're willing to drop the dough, you can get one? Yeah,
so there's two versions available. There's the one that's $3,000. That's the dev kit. That's basically you get a device and you can have at it. And there used to be a wait list, but the way they've caught up on the wait list, so pretty much anyone can get one now. There's also a $5,000 version, which adds a warranty and enterprise device management and a bunch of other features. The hardware is the same, but the price points are slightly different.
Yeah, those warranties are no joke.
No kidding. But even, I just as a comparison point, with the Vive I just got, and I had to get a new laptop to run it because I need to be mobile in order to demo it. It's a $2,700 laptop and a $700 Vive. So the price point.
You got a little break on the Vive.
Yeah.
One of those Amazon gift cards?
No, there was a holiday sale.
There it is. speak from experience. I know that's $7.99, man.
I got $100 off. Yeah.
All right, I want to go two different ways, and you're going to help me stay on track.
Sure.
Because both I really want to know. One is now you're a Vive owner. I'm an avid Vive enthusiast. We've got 5 or 6 of them at our studio, and I'm on it just about every single day. So I want to hear about your experience between true virtual reality and true augmented reality, and also I want to get back to some of your deep history, because this is not your first rodeo in this space. So let's start with your history, and then we'll get back to the hardware differences.
So I've been playing around with, and just in the VR space, and it's more been just playing around. I was at the VR summit yesterday, and had the opportunity to listen to veterans in the space that have been actively doing stuff with VR for 25 years, and just seeing the stuff that they've done and the evolution of because a lot of this technology is so new that people just create their own solutions. And some of the solutions that I saw people coming up with that they had done in the past was just amazing. And so I've been playing off and on with VR just, since the late 90s, more of as a curiosity than just kind of an active, I've got a job to do and a thing I need to get done. But, one of the things that I've always noticed, I even played with VRML.
Yeah, so they're as always, there's going to be several links on the newschoolvr.com website. There are at least 3 blog posts that you've either written or contributed to on the Citizen blog that I think are an excellent background that we will link to. But this is how I knew some of these things. So you started way back. I mean, this is not a 2016 kind of
No, it's. I mean, my exposure to it isn't just this year. I mean, I know the pain of using a virtual Game Boy. Let's just say that.
There you go. Listeners, do you know the pain of using a virtual Game Boy? No, you don't. And even if you bought one because it's like retro and super hip now, like, no, you don't.
No. So, I mean, the great thing about Nintendo is they love to try out new stuff. And there's been some great successes and some that are not so great. But anyways, so just I've always played around with it. And one of the things that has always been kind of impressed upon me as I've come in and out of the industry throughout the years is that prior to 2015, 2016, it's always been something that's kind of cool, interesting, fun to play with, but it was never very compelling for me. And I was always buying these new graphics cards with 3D capabilities and trying different VR implementations, and it just was never quite compelling until, this year when I started working with the HoloLens, and now we're getting more involved with the Vive. Just the technology's progressed to the point where it's really, it's a pleasant experience. And just with the, the capabilities of, for example, the HoloLens with the room tracking and the world locking. So for example, in my house, my HoloLens has a data map of my entire house for all of my walls and where all the different items are. It knows where those surfaces are because it starts collecting that information as soon as you turn it on.
It knows when you've moved the action figure.
It does. And so I can place like a hologram in one room. I can walk downstairs, walk outside. In fact, I've done this. I'll go outside to test some experiences. I'm modeling an entire house, so I needed to go outside. I come back, and it's still sitting in that same corner exactly where I left it.
It's really incredible.
So it's just, that kind of stuff, and just the technology's improved and evolved to the point where, we're looking at experiences that run at 60 frames per second or higher. Mm-hmm. And because one of the things that we found, and which was also one of the reasons why VR had a hard time, is that if you start dropping below that frame rate, if you have something like 30 frames per second, the experience is uncomfortable and people just want to take it off. Mm-hmm. So just seeing the evolution over the years, and it's finally come to the point where not only has the technology arrived, but we're also seeing some big movement in the industry itself. You've got Facebook dropping $2 billion on Oculus. You've got Google that's made huge investments in VR. Microsoft obviously is making an investment. Samsung is there along with them. So a lot of big players. Google is there. So, we're seeing the movement in the industry as well to align to what we believe that VR and AR and MR are here to stay.
For sure. Okay, so let's get to that conversation. There are ways to have a camera on a VR headset that would theoretically be able to show you the room that you're in, and again, theoretically be able to superimpose images Pokemon Go style, or who knows, hopefully much better. But that idea, what's the difference between the clear lens experience of HoloLens
Sure.
and the virtual experience of the Vive or the Rift?
Yeah, so with the mixed realities, and that includes HoloLens and Meta 2, Meta 2, I think it's 2 now.
Meta 2, yep.
What Magic Leap is claiming, but we haven't seen yet, and is that with the mixed reality, you're adding or overlaying the virtual experience on top of your physical reality. That's the key difference. So with the HoloLens, there's a specific field of view. It doesn't cover your entire field of view. There's a limited range, which hopefully the next HoloLens will be bigger. But
yep.
but with virtual, you're completely blocking your field of vision to immerse yourself into the virtual. So when it comes to, well, which one's better? Well, it just depends on your use case. It really does. I mean, it's much like the Mac versus PC debate, which I find to be completely pointless nowadays.
These days.
Yeah.
Well, one is kept up. Another show. Anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really depends on what do you hope to achieve with it, what do you want to get done, and what's the use case. So, for example, with what we did with Serra, we're superimposing this stuff onto the body of a patient. Now, with VR, from a training perspective and from an education perspective, maybe VR is the more appropriate solution for that, just because you can have a more immersive experience. With the Vive or the Oculus, you're putting on a headset and you have the entire field of view. Now it's like looking through swim goggles, but it's wider than you would get with the mixed reality experiences, and so you can have a deeper kind of a deeper level of immersion. So, and there's I was at the VR summit and just seeing how people are playing around with how do we overcome this, which is sometimes a hurdle for VR, where you're isolating yourself. I saw examples of people using leap sensors attached to the front of a Vive or an Oculus to be able to sense not only hands, but even just surfaces in front of them, so that people could interact with the things in front of them, and visualizing that inside the virtual reality experience.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. And there are many other shows and resources that cover these emerging technologies really deeply, and that's part of what's informed why this show is such a niche. But anyone interested in the space that may not already be following those things, I mean, leap motion is one of those words you want to do some Googling upon. Same with there's Magic Leap. There's
another one that we are looking very strongly at. The VR and the augmented reality industry is still fairly nascent. It's still fairly new for people. We haven't got wide consumer adoption yet, but even though it's still
only in that you couldn't buy modern technology until April of this year.
Right. Exactly. So from a consumer perspective, it's brand new. From the industry's perspective, this is like, oh, we're finally made it.
Right.
But even the state that the industry is right now, we're seeing so much advancement of people just really taking the technology and seeing what can we do with it. And one of those areas is with haptic feedback. So we're seeing a couple companies starting to pop up that have gloves that you can put on that have haptic feedback into the glove, so that you can have an experience with VR or with mixed reality as well, where you can reach out and actually feel the virtual object that you're trying to interact with. With some really interesting technology. We've even seen a suit that you can put on, has a jacket and pants. The company's called Tesla Suit. And a friend of mine was able to try it out. He put on the suit and he said that there's someone standing across the room that reached out and gave him a virtual hug, and he felt it.
Whoa.
So it's some really interesting use with haptic feedback.
In the form of being electrocuted, but
essentially,
totally noticeable.
Essentially, yeah. We're talking about vibration and combined with neural impulses here.
Really incredible. Wow.
So just being able to have that type of experience where you can start to have those types of, not only can you interact with the virtual world in a way that's more natural than even just the 3D experience that it is, and I'll get to that in a minute, but especially for virtual reality, where you have a shared experience where more than one person is an experience, and both of you might be remote, you could have a situation where you could be interacting more naturally with another person, from like a training perspective. Maybe you're trying to guide a certain motion or whatever. Mm-hmm. So some really interesting opportunities and some movement in this space that is happening much more quickly than I expected.
Yeah, and I feel that too. I feel this strange push and pull around. It's so new. Here it is, and I'm personally lucky to be in a scenario where that equipment was provided by the company as part of the job. I could just, now we can play with this, and it doesn't take many hours in these devices to make a checklist of things that you either know are going to come, like cordless, or B, you would like to exist.
Yes.
And then a month later, you're like, yeah, where's that? We're still waiting. Hello.
It's like there's like a list of stuff that we know that customers are telling Microsoft, and we're like, okay, come on, where's the next device?
Right.
We want version 2.
Yeah. I mean, it's not always easy to be the early adopter. I don't know if there's such a thing as the patient early adopter.
No,
and that's
there's
kind
not.
of what the industry needs right now.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of the discussion at the VR Summit yesterday and the day before was centered around, as far as what is the state of the industry right now, the adoption rates that we're starting to see. Of course, there's two main projections for the industry that I've seen online. One of them has a triple-digit billion-dollar value, which is everyone at the conference was like, "Oh yeah, that's ridiculous." Mm-hmm. The other one is a little more conservative, which is a little more realistic. But just understanding the importance and value of having experiences that resonate with consumers and that resonate with users, because the technology is still somewhat uncommon for people to go out and just experience.
No question.
I mean, everyone has a mobile phone and they can get a Google Cardboard for less than $10 and get a taste of what it's like. But as far as the premium experiences of the Oculus, the Vive, and the HoloLens, those are a little more rare. And so having something where we're reaching the tipping point where there's enough experiences that people can really latch onto it and understand the value of what it means for them is some of the primary challenges that the industry faces right now to make sure that happens. That if we throw out a bunch of software, throw out a bunch of experiences, that it's not crap, because we want something that's engaging and will continue to provide value to users more than than a very huge percentage of most of the app stores.
Yeah, or just a demo, which is kind of an epidemic right now. There's a lot of really wonderful things that you can spend 4 minutes on and be done with forever.
Yep.
It took, 6 months and, all of human civilization to get to.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about some of the specifics that we've heard Apple CEO Tim Cook talk about AR being ultimately the 800-pound gorilla is going to totally dominate over VR and its everyday practicality. VR, at least on the high-end level, has been first to market. We've seen more of these things, and they're now adopted by millions of people between Sony's PlayStation, Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and now Google Daydream and Samsung Gear VR. So, but you add all of those things up, and we're talking millions. AR still is in these very early days. You might say Pokemon Go. That's what everybody does as of, again, the recording of this show. I think we'll finally get over that conversation soon, within minutes maybe. But you've seen true AR, true high-end AR. Are there any off-the-shelf experiences right now, educational or otherwise, that somebody can just plug in and really enjoy or use? From
an augmented reality perspective? Of course, HoloLens has a couple demos that are really good. Holo Anatomy, of course, you learn about the body in life size. There's a destination experience, which, if you were to ask the question, what if HoloLens tried to do VR? That the Holo Tour would be an example. It takes you to Machu Picchu or Rome, which combines 360 video with 3D assets or 3D content. So there's a few educational demos that you can get on the HoloLens right now. I mean, one of the things with the HoloLens is still so early that there's not a lot. I'd have to do a little bit of research. I know there's some augmented reality ones that you can download on a tablet to have a kind of an education type of experience. Mm-hmm. I've seen training applications that use the augmented reality of a tablet, just through the camera to help people, help opticians understand it's a training tool for opticians.
This is an eyeball.
Yes. This is where
Point the tablet at the
don't
face.
you don't poke here. Yeah. So there are experiences out there. Most of the education ones that are easily attainable are just the augmented reality that you can get through the phone or a tablet's camera.
Gotcha. And we are just as of this week starting to list specific apps and experiences that can be utilized. Some are paid only. Some are free.
And we've researched this space, so I can send that list that we have.
That would be killer. That would be killer. And again, as of right now, because the access to head-mounted displays, or what's referred to as HMDs,
Yep.
especially in augmented reality, to get very specific, that hardware availability is so small right now that I'm happy to list things that are more tablet-oriented or phone-oriented, more of that Pokemon Go style thing. Like, oh, I'm in the right place, and the creature pops up, or the story of what happened here in history. Our very first episode with Sean Daly was about the use of an augmented reality application for a phone or tablet, where you could be on site at a historical location and see buildings that are no longer in that space. So that kind of stuff, I think, currently qualifies.
Absolutely.
Soon it won't. In the same way that you're in a 3D video game, World of Warcraft, or pick your favorite game. Those are 3D models. Like you can sort of virtually look around, but you're not in that environment in an immersive head-mounted way. And so today, I wouldn't call those VR in the same way we might have 5 years ago.
Right, and which is why there's the term or the distinction between augmented reality and mixed reality. That new term, mixed reality, came about because there's a lot of augmented realities. Pokemon Go is the most common example that people are familiar with, but that's just using the device's camera. Whereas things like Hololens and Meta, they're using head movement and head tracking. It's like borrowing the essence of VR, but applying it to the augmented reality and applying it to your physical reality, which is why we have a new term for that.
Gotcha. Do you see that term continuing on for some time?
I believe so. It seems pretty standard. A lot of people use mixed and augmented interchangeably, which is perfectly normal.
Intel likes blended.
Blended, yeah. There we go.
Everybody's got to get theirs. There's only so many words left.
Yeah, exactly.
Paul Reynolds, formerly with Magic Leap and now with Vertex Labs VR, or Vertex Labs 3D, he's advocating for everybody just to start calling it VRARMR.
That doesn't roll, so I don't think that'll catch on.
VRARM VRARMR.
Rommel.
We'll see. It cracks me up more than it should, but got a little confusing times. I think there's a huge number of people out there, especially teachers, educators, that are whether that's corporate training or academic or otherwise, that are really anxious to use this. Like they believe, it's like, say no more, I'm in. How do I use it? So what do we do for that crowd right now?
That's a great example. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are, and us included, that are looking for opportunities to demonstrate what this is capable of. I mean, that's one of the goals of what we did with the partnership program and the showcases teams to demonstrate, here are some things that you can do. Project Serra was one of them. There was PACCAR was there. They had, PACCAR, they make semi-trucks. They were doing some aerodynamics visualizations. Lowe's has an experience where you have a kind of a blank slate kitchen. You put on a HoloLens and you can design your whole kitchen. You can change the surfaces and various elements of that experience. And so there's quite a few companies that are looking at it, but there's also a lot of quite a few developers out there that are just looking for opportunities to start playing around with it, and even just starting to have discussions around what's possible. I was chatting with at the conference. I was chatting with someone I met from Pearson that they have a nurse training application that they've already made for HoloLens. So there is movement in the space. Unfortunately, not a lot of it is public yet and search and findable through Google yet. But it's just a matter of time before it is.
Absolutely, it's going to feel like overnight, I'm sure. But in the meantime, it's and then the other one is, okay, great. How do I create something? How did you guys go about actually producing real content for this stuff in a world where this stuff is so new. There's no great tool for that.
Well, thankfully, with Hololens, they created the way that they look at the device is it's a Windows 10 device. It fits into the Windows 10 stack, so it uses a lot of the same kind of APIs. You use Visual Studio and C# to program with, and for the 3D visualization portion of it, it's using Unity, which is very common in the industry for game development, and even on the VR side as well. Mm-hmm. So it's using some fairly common tool sets, so that it's not too hard to get into it. It's not like you have to learn a whole bunch of new things. It's really just understanding the commonly accepted tools that are out there with some added features that the HoloLens is capable of. So you're tapping into the HoloLens APIs, and that's basically it. It's actually not too far of a leap to get involved in it.
Gotcha. Nice. My hope, my vision is that there will be many tools for the non-technical teacher or instructor that wants to create an experience that is useful and fun and engaging without having to be a programmer or a 3D artist.
Yeah, and there's some early steps in that direction. We'll say the tools aren't quite there, but looking at putting the power in the hands of the creator. Not to steal the thunder away from the developers, but it's the beginning. Well, the developers are going to have to create it.
Screw those guys.
Yeah, but to have people that don't have, that don't necessarily want to get involved with code, but still want to be able to create experiences, that is something that many people in the industry are looking at, and even just Microsoft. They've, the last update was the Creators Update. So providing tools to make it easier for people to create 3D content and be able to utilize that in various forms, including HoloLens and their VR headset.
Hear, hear. So you heard it here, if not first, then most recently. Teachers and instructors, it's coming, and it's going to be huge. I mean, once we democratize access to these creative tools, I think not only for the teachers, but also for students, and really being able to get the hands-on experience in a virtual space that is not possible or practical in the real world.
Absolutely. And just the, really the way that I look at this new technology is that all of us are three-dimensional beings. That's what's in our DNA. But the way that we've interfaced with our data has always been through 2 dimensions. So it started with books, paper, cave walls, whatever. But, we start writing things down, and that's how we absorb our data. And then we have technology with computers that we're able to represent things in 3D, but still it's on a 2D screen. Yeah, we have some 3D TVs and 3D movies out there, but as far as the common technology, it's traditionally been 2 dimensions. So we have this new virtual and augmented and mixed realities that are able to present experiences and information in a way that's 3D. And that was like one of the eye-opening experiences for me that made me kind of realize that, well, this stuff is here for real now. It's not just a gimmick. It's just you're seeing this stuff in 3 dimensions, and it opens up a higher level of understanding that feels more natural to me. Of course, the interfaces and the controls still have a little bit of ways to go, but it's a really strong step in a direction that I think feels more natural, just for us as human beings.
Hear, hear. Also, did you hear the reality train rolling through just now?
I did.
in case that's not editable outer of that's heavy stuff on the way. all of the above. Man, it's again a Friday evening. Our last show was also filmed on a Friday evening. The ice storm is on its way, and for our own safety, perhaps we should be on our way. But thank you so much, Matt, for being on the show today.
Always a pleasure.
You are the first to really speak directly or semi-exclusively about AR, and certainly having built practical applications in that. You are at the forefront of the field, sir.
Thank you, sir.
New School VR is graciously supported by and recorded live at Concordia University in beautiful Portland, Oregon. For over 100 years, Concordia has been preparing teachers and learning professionals for life and for a living. For more information, visit cu-portland.edu. And by ... an experiential design and technology studio specializing in custom virtual reality and experiential marketing activations that incite wonder and inspire action. See more at ..io. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or through your favorite podcast delivery app. Visit us online at newschoolvr.com, and thanks for listening. I'm your host, Pinky Gonzalez, and this is New School VR.
This VR podcast is dope.